And now the introit, to be sung by the Cathedral Choir for the Fallen, the words of Lawrence Binion and David Hamilton's music. Now the welcome and the bidding by the Dean of Wellington.
Welcome to this Cathedral of St. Paul and to this special service. Today we honor an unknown warrior, one among many who died in a far-off country and were buried without name. In so doing, we remember before God all who gave their lives in war, and particularly the 2 world wars, in the defense of freedom, justice, and peace. We remember too the families of those whose loved ones died in places unknown, who have had to live with not knowing, unable to find a place to grieve and shed their tears. May this service in some small way bring comfort and completion, even as we pray for that peace for which they fought and died. In God's name we pray. Amen.
And now a hymn which has been sung in garrisons and camps and bases on the eve of battle after defeat and victory was sung in Westminster Abbey on this day 84 years ago for the burial of the British unknown warrior. O God, our help in ages past. A reading from the Book of Wisdom by the Chief of Defence Force.
A reading from the Book of Wisdom, chapter 3, beginning at verse 1. But the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them. In the eyes of the foolish, they have seemed to have died, and their departure was thought to be a disaster, and their going from us to be their destruction. But they are at peace. For though in the sight of others they were punished, their hope is full of immortality. Having been disciplined a little, they will receive great good, because God tested them and found them worthy of himself. Like gold in the furnace, he tried them, and like a sacrificial burnt offering, he accepted them. In the time of their visitation, they will shine forth and will run like sparks through the stubble. They will govern nations and rule over peoples, and the Lord will reign over them forever. Those who trust in him will understand truth, and the faithful will abide with him in love, because grace and mercy are upon his holy ones, and he watches over his elect.
And now, Director of Music Michael Fulcher leads the choir in a tribute to France, understandably, where so many New Zealand servicemen and women lie, the Cantique de Jean Racine. And now an echo from another battlefield locked in our memory, Gallipoli, from Chinook Bear.
Quinn's Post 8:15 p.m. on the 5th of August, 1915. My sweetheart, in less than 2 hours we move off to a valley where we will be up all night and tomorrow in readiness for a big attack, which will start from tomorrow night. Everything promises well, and victory should rest with us. God grant it so, and that our casualties will not be too heavy. I expect to go through all right, but my dear wife, if anything untoward happens to me, there are our dear children to be brought up. You know how I love and have loved you, and we have had many years of great happiness together. If at any time in the past I seemed absorbed in affairs, it was that I might make proper provision for you and the children. That was due from me. It is true that perhaps I overdid it somewhat. I believe now that I did, but did not see it at the time. I regret very much now that it was so, and that I lost more happiness than I need have done. You must forgive me. Forgive also anything unkindly or hard that I may have said or done in the past. I have made a will, and it is in the office in Stratford. I think it was justly drawn. Anyway, I intended it so to be. I hope and think that the provision for you and the children will keep you and them in ease and comfort. I know you will never forget me, or let the dear children do so. I am prepared for death, and hope that God will have forgiven me all my sins. My desire for life, so that I may see and be with you again, could not be greater. But I have only done what every man was bound to do in our country's need. It has been a great consolation to me that you approved my action. The sacrifice was really yours. May you be consoled and rewarded by our dear Lord. Your loving husband, William George Malone.
Part of the letter that he wrote on the eve of the battle at Chunukbair in August 1915. He was killed in that battle. Colonel Malone now lies in an unknown grave at Gallipoli. The Equale for 4 trombones. Beethoven's Equale, played in Westminster Abbey on the 11th of November 1920. And
we are
now
here today
the address from
to
the Prime
honour a
Minister.
warrior who has lain for close to 90 years in foreign soil and who has now been called back to serve his country once more. New Zealand has waited a long time for this day. It is over 80 years since Prime Minister William Massey first explored the idea of a tomb of the unknown warrior in the aftermath of our catastrophic losses in World War I. It is perhaps a mark of the journey we have taken as a nation since then that we are finally welcoming home our own unknown warrior. In so doing, we're forging an enduring link with all New Zealand's war dead who lie overseas. Some 250,000 New Zealanders have served overseas in the armed forces. More than 30,000 lost their lives in the wars of the last century. 9,000 of them have no known grave. By gathering to commemorate this one soldier, we pay tribute to all who have gone to war and either come back irrevocably changed or did not come home. It is sobering indeed to think of the impact war has had on New Zealand families. The man who lies here was one of over 18,000 New Zealanders who died in World War I. Given that our population was less than 1 million at the time, very few families would have been unaffected. Subsequent wars, including World War II, have taken nearly 12,000 more New Zealanders. These are daunting figures, but history is not only in the figures or even in the major events, the political decisions, the strategies, or the battles. To glimpse the full story, we need to look into history's microcosm, to imagine the sheer terror of being in combat, the raw yearning for home and loved ones, and the profound courage of going on and on, with each moment reducing the likelihood of ever seeing loved ones again. Of the many individual tragedies of war, a few are captured on record. One is the story of a mother in Tākaka. In 1917, and recently widowed, she received 3 separate telegrams. From them, she learned that her 3 sons, who had gone to war, had all been killed within the space of 8 days at Passchendaele. Their bodies were never recovered, so she could take no comfort even in the thought that after death, her sons were being cared for. Few of us nowadays can begin to imagine how that must have felt. But such stories serve to remind us that war is about living the unthinkable, enduring the unendurable. And they remind us that these events had an impact not only on those who served, but also on their families and of the communities of which they were once part. Nothing can ever fully do justice to even one life lost in wartime. But as of today, what we can do is continue to commemorate and honour the ultimate sacrifice of New Zealand's servicemen and women. We can also hope that visiting the tomb of the unknown warrior will be a positive and even a healing experience for many. This is particularly important in a country as physically isolated as ours. Our war dead are not forgotten, but they are far away. Distance can prevent even those whose loved ones have known graves from ever visiting the burial site. So the concept behind the tomb of the unknown warrior is to provide a place where people can mourn their loved ones and where others can come to pay their respects too. While we are bringing back one man who died in war, we know that those who remain on foreign soil are being cared for by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission and its agents. And one cannot go to a Commonwealth War cemetery where our people are buried without being deeply moved, both by the visible evidence of New Zealand's losses and also by the care which is taken to tend to the graves and bring peace and serenity to their surroundings. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission and its worldwide task embody the spirit of cooperation, peace, and healing. In many ways, we seem far removed now from times of war. For young people, New Zealand's participation in large-scale war is something which happened to previous generations. Yet, interest in commemorating those who never returned is increasing. Down through the generations, people want to know what happened to their lost relatives. They seek out their graves in faraway places if they can, and they come to Anzac Day as part of ensuring that the fallen are never forgotten. As well, there is a broader interest in understanding the part which history, including war history, has played in shaping the country we are today and the role we play in the international community. Part of our maturing sense of national identity is the realization that being New Zealanders is not just about living the best lives we can in the present. It is about incorporating in our nation's memory all that which has led us to where we are today, along with a sense of responsibility to nurture those values for the generations which will follow us. In being chosen to represent more than 30,000 others who died in the service of New Zealand, the unknown warrior has enormous symbolism for this country. All we know of him is that he died on the Western Front and that he was one of us. We are the future generations for whom he lost his life. In a very real sense, he is one of the foundations of today's society. In participating in commemorative events and seeking to visit the graves of their forebears, New Zealanders are exploring such personal sacrifices. Those of ordinary New Zealanders who did not have the right to decide the course of events, but who did their duty according to the imperatives of their time. In honouring their sacrifice, we are sustaining a deep and lasting respect for our war dead. This is not only an occasion of sorrow, but also an opportunity to pay tribute to our New Zealand servicemen and women who lost their lives serving our nation. We acknowledge that they gave their lives in our country's service and that all of us today, in some sense, owe them the lives we now lead. We all hope there will never be another world situation on the scale of the wars of the last century. But New Zealand servicemen and women continue to go abroad to places of conflict, putting their lives in jeopardy. They serve our country with courage and dedication as they work to bring peace to troubled places, and they are highly regarded worldwide. Armistice Day is about reconciliation and the beginning of healing. It is a day on which to remember that while the world of the new millennium continues to present enormously taxing problems, it is the spirit of peace and resolution which drives our interactions in the international arena. The tomb of the unknown warrior symbolises the very personal tragedies New Zealanders have endured in our engagement with wars overseas. Let it also be a testimony of pride in New Zealand's contribution, a reminder of the heroism of our people, and a symbol of our ongoing commitment to a more harmonious and peaceful world.
And now to complement those moving words from the Prime Minister, a Waiata, inspired by the death of a Maori soldier in World War I, and the joy that there would be if he could return.